What's up guys, my name is Ace, and recently we got some brand new leaks surrounding Strongholds in Warzone 2, and from the looks of this, these Strongholds may be a much bigger game changer than I initially expected when it comes to the overall gameplay loop in Warzone. Now these leaks are once again coming from WZII UK, who is a data miner and is pulling this code from Warzone Mobile, which is containing a ton of assets and code for Modern Warfare 2 as well as Warzone 2. So with that in mind, of course, this should be taken with a grain of salt, at least to some extent. Just because it's in the code now doesn't necessarily mean it's going to end up being exactly like this by the time the game launches. Things can change a lot in development and things can get scrapped as well, but I still feel like this is worth having a discussion about because this really could be a big game changer. And diving right into this, first I want to recap the initial leaks surrounding Strongholds. This came from Nero Cinema. Somebody reached out to him and leaked some information, and this was corroborated by Tom Henderson, who is a known leaker in the community as well. So there definitely seems to be some credibility behind this, especially combined with the new leaks surrounding Strongholds. But with this, Strongholds are essentially going to be areas scattered around the Warzone map that have specific objectives tied to them, and there's a heavy presence of AI soldiers in those strongholds. And in the initial leak at least, there was mention that these strongholds are the new method for obtaining your loadouts in the game. So instead of just going to a buy station and buying your loadout, you have to essentially beat a stronghold or complete the objective that's attached to a stronghold on the map, and that will award you with your loadout drop. Now, I am a little bit skeptical about that. I feel like maybe this is going to be one method to obtain loadout drops on top of the ability to buy it in buy stations, or maybe still have the loadout drops coming in for free on the map at designated times. But the primary idea behind these strongholds is you complete an objective and you are rewarded appropriately for that completion. And also, each stronghold will have different difficulty levels, and the quality of the reward will be tied to the difficulty level of the stronghold. So a really difficult stronghold will presumably award you with much better loot once you complete it. And I should also mention that this does line up with something that was officially confirmed by the developers. This is something they mentioned to us in the pre-reveal media briefing that I got to attend. The devs straight up stated that they were currently testing Warzone 2 with up to 100 real players and 300 AI soldiers on the map at once. And that really seems to be adding even more validity to these Stronghold leaks. Now let's get into the fresh leaks. These are the ones that are coming from WZII UK. And essentially what was leaked here is a bunch of strings in the code that show off splashes that will appear on your screen in relation to Strongholds. So these are essentially the pop-ups that you'll see on your screen when you're engaging with a contract or a stronghold, I guess in this case, basically telling you what to do and what the status is on your objective. So the first one is a message that's telling you that your squad has control over the stronghold. There's another one that just says complete all 3 operations. Then there's one that says control was lost, so it looks like you can also lose control of a stronghold area. Then we have various operations within Strongholds, so these are the objectives or tasks that you can activate, and there are splashes for activating an operation as well as completing an operation. The first of these is called Person of Interest, which requires you to defeat a boss within a stronghold. The second is called Bomb Disposal, and this requires you to find and disable 3 active C4 explosives in a stronghold. And then finally, there's one called Search and Destroy, which requires you to destroy all of the terminals defended by enemy AI before the data is fully uploaded. So it does appear that there will be a time restriction on this. It also appears that you have to manually activate these operations in order to start the timer and in order for them to track. And it's also worth noting there are a couple strings talking about strongholds being unlocked. And the first one is the normal stronghold unlock, which requires you to complete all 3 operations in order for you to unlock that stronghold, where presumably that's where the rewards for completing these objectives are. It's kind of like opening a bunker, for instance, but instead of doing random Easter egg things, what you're doing is completing these specific tasks. But then there's also a special stronghold unlock string that mentions a black site, and this one requires you to complete all 4 operations. And like I said, we only got to see 3 operations listed in this code, so presumably there is going to be more types of tasks that you can complete within these strongholds. But it appears this black site stronghold is going to be one of the more difficult ones, where you have to perform an extra task, but you get a better reward out of that stronghold. And that covers it for these new leaked strings surrounding strongholds, and while it isn't a whole lot, it really does tell us a good amount about how these strongholds are going to work. And the interesting thing is, they've actually played around with this sort of idea, just at a more basic level, multiple times in the past with Warzone. We actually saw something like this when that ship showed up to Verdansk, and the zombies were on the ship, and you could activate the mission from the zombies machine, and then once you kill all the zombies that spawn from that, it opens up a special room, and there are some loot crates in there, and you can get some loot out of that. And then there was something similar when they added Nakatomi Tower to Verdansk, where there was a vault that you had to open, and there was interaction with AI bots there as well. So Strongholds just seem to be sort of the evolution of that, but instead of just being in a limited time event and only one section of the map, instead it looks like they're going to be incorporating this into a core part of the gameplay on a game-to-game basis. And as of right now, I really don't know what to think about this. I kind of have mixed thoughts and feelings surrounding this. And of course, I don't want to judge it too harshly until I actually see it in action and see how they incorporate all of the elements of the game to interact with these strongholds. On one hand, I absolutely feel like the core formula for Warzone and even the Battle Royale genre in general, it needs to evolve in some way in order to maintain long-term success. Like if they just launch Warzone 2 and it's basically Warzone 1 with a clean slate of content and a brand new map and maybe a few new movement mechanics and stuff, I don't think that will be enough to really rejuvenate Warzone and bring tons and tons of players back long term. Of course, short term, everybody's going to be checking it out, it's going to be exciting, but if it really doesn't bring much new to the table, I think it would only take a few months before people start tapering off again and things become stale because it's much of the same just with new content. Additionally, I think one of the big issues that developers tend to face with Battle Royales, especially Battle Royales that have been around for years and years, and players have absolutely mastered everything there is to master about the game, it makes it a very difficult and unwelcoming experience for newer or really casual players, because even with skill-based matchmaking, they're still getting stomped on like crazy, and they just don't really enjoy the gameplay loop as a result of that. Whereas implementing Strongholds and having sort of that mini game within the game where players can fight against AI bots that they feel much more confident fighting against, and they can enjoy that element of the gameplay loop, I feel like this is something that will add a lot for those more casual players that don't really stand much of a chance fighting against real players on a consistent basis over and over again. Now, of course, they're still going to have to fight with other real players in the match. It's just this adds that extra layer of something for them to do that they can actually feel confident in completing, and they can feel some sense of accomplishment, even if they don't end up winning the match because they just can't compete with the people that have mastered every single detail about the game. So on that side of things, I do feel like this could add a lot more depth to the game, especially for the casual players out there, and I do feel like this could be very popular among the more casual audience. Having said that though, there is the other side of things, the more hardcore Battle Royale purists that don't want to be completing objectives or killing AI bots in the middle of a Battle Royale game. They just want to loot up, get their kills, and try to stay alive and be the last man or the last squad standing. And for these types of players, I feel like Strongholds aren't going to land well with them because it could really take away from that core Battle Royale experience where these Strongholds to them might feel like menial tasks that they have to complete, not that they necessarily want to complete, but they have to complete it in order to get their loot, so then they can finally start playing Warzone the way they want to play Warzone, which is with their loadout. Like if we even look back to when Caldera first launched, they added a delay where you couldn't even buy your loadout early on in a match, and they added that barrier to getting your loadout. That did not fly well with a really hardcore Warzone audience. And with Strongholds, especially if these are the only methods to get our loadouts, I feel it would have the same sort of effect on the community, but even perhaps to a greater extent. And honestly, even if we do have the traditional method of buying loadouts, I still feel like there could be backlash against these Strongholds because it could simply take a lot of the focus away from actually engaging in fights with real enemy players, and instead people will just try to avoid that at all costs and just focus on these Strongholds instead. So this is why at this point I have mixed feelings on these Strongholds. In some ways, I definitely feel like things need to evolve. In other ways, I could see how this could frustrate a lot of longtime Warzone players that really like the current gameplay loop in Warzone. I'm hoping the developers are well aware of the implications of this and working on methods to make everybody happy here. But this is why I'm really just taking a wait-and-see approach. As with many of the things that have been leaked, I think it's kind of silly to jump to conclusions immediately and immediately say this is absolutely awful or this is going to be definitely amazing, there's no way this could possibly fail. I think at this point, until we see the full picture, it's best to just take a wait-and-see approach. However, I do want to hear what your guys' initial reaction to these strongholds are in those comments down below, now that we have some new information surrounding this. Do you like the idea of adding these objective points around the map that involve interacting with AI players, rather than just focusing on killing real players in the game? Or do you feel like this could potentially make the gameplay worse in Warzone? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.